I have the pleasure of introducing Larry Carver. He's also our co-host for today for this event. And he's been, well, actually, I should probably start off on how we met. We actually met at a networking event, believe it or not. About a little over a year ago, we met at a government networking conference, and we traded cards and stayed in touch over time, and we've since then had some great collaborations on several things, not the least of which is this event today. But Larry brings a wealth of information. He is a veteran, and we thank him for his service as a veteran. He has his hands in a lot of different areas of government contracting, has a lot of experience he brings to the plate. And a lot of times when you look at this topic, business capture, it's a lessons learned type of thing. It's the experience that you have over time of what to do and what not to do, and to avoid the, most aptly, what not to do. So with that, Larry's going to talk about business capture, which is an integral part of each one of our businesses. And it'll allow you to streamline a lot of things. All of our presentations today have been here to help you not waste time. So with that being said, I don't want to take up too much of Larry's time, but I want to at least do a lead in to encourage you to definitely take notes on what he's going to present, because I think it will definitely help each of your businesses in making you be more efficient. So with that, Larry Carver.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, and I'm going to try to keep this casual, and I'm not going to do a lot of PowerPoints, but I am going to show a few things up on the screen. And basically, there's different parts of the business development life cycle when looking for opportunities. And the first part is your sales or your business development piece. And then there's the capture piece, which is where you really go gather that intelligence to make a decision if you're going to bid it or you're not going to bid that opportunity. And what we're going to talk about today is some of those best practices, what you can look at, what you can do to try to strengthen your ability to win. And that's really what capture is about. And then the third part of that process is your proposal, and then things that you need to do in that proposal process. And then the follow-up after you win of account management. And that's typically your business development process. All right, so one of the things that, and excuse me as I kind of go down through this. I'm going to talk about first, when you are looking at trying to sell to the government, there's a few things that you need to kind of consider. And I would call these my, top lists. And the 6 top things that you need to consider is, having extreme customer and market focus. So don't try to be everything to everybody. And you guys have probably found that as you've gone out there, is when you meet with the small business officers or you meet with some of the prime contractors, they're asking you, what do you do? And Charles's organization does a great job at helping people kind of define that within your business, is saying, what is it that you really want to be known for, right? And I can tell you that a lot of companies, even companies that have been what I would call very mature in the market space, still have a hard time with that. Where they'll say, I'm an IT company. Well, what does that mean? That would be sort of like a person saying, I'm in the hammer business. Well, what kind of hammers, right? You really need to define what it is you do. So try to kind of stay focused, and also with your market, stay focused as to who do you want to really sell to, okay? The next thing is actually aligning your products and services and solutions with the customer's high priority needs. And what I can tell you is from years of experience is that if you actually have something that meets the needs that the organization has, be it a prime contractor, be it an agency, they will find the money to buy what you have if it's something that they need to fulfill their mission, right? You don't have to really beg for it if it's something that they absolutely need. And going to them and saying, hey, I'm a veteran-owned business, or I'm a small business, or I'm a woman-owned business, or 8A company, you're still in there with 10,000 others that are fitting that exact same mold. So figure out what it is that differentiates you from all the other people out there. And don't go in and say, we got great people. I've never met anybody who says, we got horrible people, you should hire us. So please, try to figure out what it is you do well. Hey, I actually do HR, and we've actually built these things that make it streamlined faster for companies or something. Know what it is that you do that makes you unique and different. There's a reason you started your business, because of a passion you have, and that's really what it is. Remember what that is. And then what you need to do is align your resources to build that customer loyalty. And once people know who you are and they feel comfortable with you, they'll buy from you. The next thing we want to talk about is aligning your sales process with the customer's buying process. So know, if you're selling to certain agencies, how long does it take for them to buy? And what vehicles do they use? And if you've got a great product but you don't have that contract vehicle, find somebody that does have it. And if you've got a customer who wants to buy something, anybody who has a contract vehicle for that customer will take you on as a sub. There's no problem with that. I've had a lot of people tell me, but I don't have a way for them to buy from me. If they want, what you have, they will find a way to buy it. You just have to connect with the right people. And then align your time utilization and territories within the market potential. So if you know that it's going to take you 18 months to get into a certain agency and to penetrate that agency, allocate that time and know it's going to take you that much time. But also ensure you don't go out of business while doing it. And, so just keep those things in mind. So what I do is I tell people, I said, okay, there's a few things you want to look at. And actually, I'm going to go to a flow chart here that makes it easier to view. Did that make that too small up there? Okay. What I'll do is I'll actually make it larger. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, so when you're actually looking at a proposal and you're saying, okay, do I want to bid this particular thing? First thing you want to do is you want to look at it and say, does it align to our competencies? Can we do this? If the answer is yes, okay, great. Then you're going to go down to the next level and say, okay, if it's yes, are we an incumbent for that particular thing, for this thing we're going after? And if the answer is no, is there an incumbent? If the answer is no to that, then you're going to go down and say, hey, do we know the customer? If there is an incumbent, though, what you want to ask is that incumbent liked? Because if there is an incumbent and the incumbent is liked, can you team with that incumbent to go after this work? If the answer is no on that, what you're going to do is go to no bid. Because if there's an incumbent, they like the incumbent, and you can't team with that incumbent to win, there's a real good chance you're never going to win that business, okay? But let's go back to aligning to your competencies. Let's say it doesn't align to a current competency you have, but maybe it's something you want to bring on as a new competency for the business. Okay, that's okay. And then you can do that and then go back, and again, if there's an incumbent doing the work, follow through. Or does it go to a new service that you're trying to bring on? Again, there's nothing wrong with those, but just ensure that there's not an incumbent that's like doing that type of work. The next thing you need to look at is saying, do you have customer intimacy with that person or group that you're trying to do business with? If the answer is no, can you team with somebody that has a relationship, right? And, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, find somebody who knows the customer, who has a relationship with the customer, has past performance with that customer. And then, do you have personnel even within your own business? That's one of the things that a lot of businesses forget to look at. You have your salespeople or your business development people, your marketing people going out there meeting with people and say, hey, there's this great opportunity over here at XYZ agency. And then what happens is they forget to ask their own staff, does anybody know anybody over there? Or, hey, well, my next door neighbor happens to be the director. Oh, wow, really? And I've seen that so many times. I mean, I've worked with companies and small companies, and after the debrief, we're saying, well, I guess we just didn't understand what they wanted. And, somebody's there and said, wow, I didn't know you guys were going after something there. You know, my neighbor is one of the people who work there. He actually is in charge of that particular group. Wow. And you just don't look inside. And that's one of the things, you know, that I usually tell businesses is when I'm talking with them is saying the first thing you need to do is you need to understand who works for you, right? Who's within your whole organization. You might have hired this guy because he was a great system engineer, or this lady because she was a great programmer. If you don't understand the other things that they have, that other 6 degrees of separation, when you're going after market spaces, you're losing. So you need to engage the people that you've hired. You've hired great people for a reason because they're great. Those people also have connections. Utilize them. Everybody knows somebody. So the next thing also is, do you understand what the customer is looking for? And I don't mean, can you read the RFP? Have you talked to the customer? Have you really found out what it is they're looking for? What is their objectives by putting this thing out? And then, can we really fulfill those requirements? Can we really get what they're truly looking for? And I'll give you an example of this is I did a capture on a really large opportunity, which this small company displaced 2 very large federal contractors. And the reason we displaced them is strictly because they did not talk to the customer. And we went in and we talked to them and we said to them, what is it you're really looking for? Well, you know, what I really want is I want something that I can grow over the next few years because I really want to go in this direction. But right now we don't have the budget for that. So we said, okay. So when we put the proposal together, we said we put something in there that was scalable to be able to go to this in the future should they decide to go in this method. The others didn't do that, and we ended up winning just because of that one piece of knowledge that we had. Okay. So the next thing is ensure that you have the resources to be able to do this. You know, writing a proposal and a response takes time. It takes man hours. It takes, you know, people away from work. You're going to need your technical people involved. You're going to need writers involved. You're going to have those resources from the company. In small companies, you're wearing multiple hats. You might be the person out there doing the hustling, writing, you know, and doing the work. So, you know, just understand, though, you only have so many hours in the day, right? And if not, if you don't have the resources, can you purchase them? Can you afford to purchase them? You know, a lot of times that's a burden on the company as well. And last but not least, and to ensure that the leadership wants this as well. Because if your leadership isn't 100% behind this, it's never going to work either. Okay, so talking about capture management, there's several pieces within capture management itself. And so first of all, you want to take it and you want to say, okay, let's look at this qualifications. Do we meet all the things we just talked about? Okay, we've looked at this and we've said, yep, okay, we meet this. We've talked to the management team. They're involved. They said, let's make this happen. Okay, so now we need to go out from a capture manager's point of view and say, okay, do we really understand what the customer wants? And this is when you engage with the customer. You go try to talk to the customer. You can do this before the RFP is released. You cannot do this after the RFP is released. After the RFP is released, they cannot talk to you, okay? So if you know that something's coming up, and how do you know that? You start looking at the forecasts. You can also do searches for contracts that have been awarded 2.5 years, 3 years ago, and see the things that are coming up. So you know that if this person won a contract and it's 3 years ago, you know it's going to be coming up again. It's a 3-year contract, or if it's a 5-year contract, you know, and start doing your due diligence on these things at least a year in advance, and say these are my targets for a year out. And then start developing solution statements. What is it we're going to do? How are we going to do this? And start putting those things together. This is what we want to accomplish. We want to accomplish X. And then start talking to your technical people within your organizations and saying, if we're going to do X, how would we do it? And how do we do X better than anybody else? Where have we done X before? What were some of the outcomes of that? Why did we do this and it worked out really well for somebody, right? So tell those stories. And then what you want to do is you also want to start assessing your competition, okay? If I say, oh, okay, I know that I went to an industry day and there were 50 other people there looking at the same opportunity, and I know who those companies are, how many of those are real competitors? How many of them really have a solution that would fit? Maybe some of them have a great solution, I want to team with them. And start looking at that and say, what's my chance of win if there's 50 companies? Why are we going to be picked, right? And a lot of times that'll tell you by assessing your competition if this was really viable. And I can tell you from a capture perspective is don't get caught drinking your own Kool-Aid, right? Don't say, we're great, we're great, we're great, and you start believing it because you're writing all this stuff down and you've told this great story, and I've seen this so many times where people have been sitting in a room and they do an initial read on this and say, well, we probably got a 30% chance of win. And then they write this great story and say, we've got a 99% chance of win. And it's like, no, you still have a 30% chance of win. You're just great writers, right? So don't get caught drinking your own Kool-Aid. That's what I can tell you with that perspective, is understanding what is your real opportunity for win. And can you price it correctly? Can you do the work? Are there other people out there who you believe may be able to be better than you? And if so, what would it take to be better than them? And start understanding those things. Understand where their weaknesses are. So, know who your competitors are, know what makes them good, know what makes them bad. All right, then start developing what's called win strategies and win themes. And that's a lot of times the hardest thing for people is saying, okay, what is a win theme, right? And it's really talking about what makes you better than somebody else. What is that discriminator that you bring for something? And incorporate that into your thing across. Well, we actually supply management teams that go to every briefing with the customer. And our CEO is personally involved with all of our contracts to go out and meet with the clients to ensure 100% that the people are doing what they need to do. We have people that go out and talk to the clients and make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Okay, and then the next thing you need to do is build a team. If this is not an effort you can do by yourself, build the right team to win. Why do sports teams go out and find the best athletes they can? Because they want to win, right? And it's really going out there, finding those people, the person that's sitting next to you right now. And you may look at them and say, well, they're a competitor of mine. Well, they might be in some situations, but they also might be a teammate, right? They could be somebody that has one piece of knowledge of what you're trying to do that builds it even stronger for you, right? So look at everybody as potential teammates, and for opportunities, team with them. And then, just make sure that you have your teaming agreements, your NDAs, those types of things in place. And then identify who the key personnel are that you're going to need for this particular contract. And, what happens for small businesses is you can put contingency offers out there. And so you want to have that best person possible to win this contract. And so you put a contingency offer to the person. You say, Richard, sitting back there, I know you're a great engineer, and if I win this contract, I'd like to make you an offer to come to work for me. And, so you get that offer written down, and should you win, that person comes to work for you. But it's having those things in place prior to that RFP so somebody else doesn't pick them up, right? And then set your price to win. And understanding what price to win is not necessarily the lowest price, but it's really the best value price. And figuring out where it is that you need to, looking at your competitors, and there's lots of ways you can go out there and do a competitive analysis and price is, you can go out and you can see, doing FOIAs and things like that. You can see what other people have charged for similar type contracts. You can look at the value of the contract, figure out the number of years that they did, put their spend rates over those quarters and so forth, and you can figure out what their prices were. And then you can look at it and say, well, how competitive are we in that pricing scheme? And then adjust it as needed. Okay, so then what you do at that point is you start saying, okay, what's our risks? And assess your risks, right? And there's multiple types of risks that you need to look at. You need to look at, what risks are there of doing the business? What risks are there of possibly getting the contract and not being able to perform it because of whatever? Are there certain things within it that aren't really defined well? And then there's also the risk of winning. If you do win the business, maybe they want a facility stood up within 5 miles of their site. Well, now all of a sudden you have to go get new real estate. You have to, do all those types of things. You have to get an office set up. You have to do all those and say, well, there's some risk involved with that. If we end up with this contract, is it really going to support this type of facility? So all those types of things, you need to do a risk analysis. And then hopefully by the time you have all these things put together, then the RFP is going to come out, and then you can start through that process. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to kind of open it up for questions now, because I've kind of spoken a lot, and see if you guys have questions, and then we can come back around to some other things. Any questions? Everybody's just ready to go home? Yes, ma'am. And I would say the question she had is it more cost effective to hire an outside firm to help you with this process, with capture and business development and so forth? It depends upon the effort. And it depends also on your workload, right? So what I tell a lot of small businesses is if you have more time than you have money, you need to do it yourself. Right? But, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that you have to be able to support that from the business. You shouldn't go in the hole looking for an opportunity, right? You shouldn't put your company in jeopardy financially because of a hope, right? Because even when you submit a proposal, if you're the only proposal that was submitted, they still don't have to take you. It doesn't guarantee work, right? So there's no guarantee when you do put a proposal in, even if it's a great proposal. Can some of these resources be helpful? Absolutely they can. And, I ran an organization that did that for a number of years. So it really just depends on what you're looking at. And I know that didn't really answer the question, but I think that there are people out there who can be very helpful in putting these things together for you. They can ensure your compliancy. As Lee was saying in his last presentation, is the fact of having red teams. And what he had said by that is you want to make sure that, as I said, don't drink your own Kool-Aid, right? You're going through this. It's very difficult for you to look at something after you've spent 5 days writing it to be objective and say, it could be better, right? I've never met a mom who thinks she has an ugly child, right? So, it's the same thing. It's you can't look at your own work and say it could be better. Having somebody look at it with a fresh set of eyes, as he has stated, it allows you to look and make sure, first of all, you should have a compliance checklist, right? Make sure you met all the the shalls, do's, musts, right? You want to do those things. And then, is it understandable? Are you putting a message out that somebody can basically read it? And I think that's what he was talking about, you know, when he used the analogy of, you know, the dumbest person in the company. But what he was trying to say by that, I believe, is saying that make sure it's understandable for anybody to read it. That, you know, if your whole organization is a bunch of, you know, triple PhD people, and you know, everything that they talk about is at such a high level, and they're looking at it going, I don't understand why they couldn't get it. You know? But you know, it's got to be at a level where anybody reading it goes, wow, this makes sense. This is great. They know what they're talking about. They understand what we want, and they get it. I want to do business with this company, right? That's the message that you want. And you know, I tell people is when you have your proposal and it's finished and it's going out, people should be able to read it and go, wow. And if they go, well, so what? You didn't get a good message across. If you can't get a wow by the time you're done, you're missing something still, right? It should be wow. People should read it and go, wow. You know, I mean, I've sat on red teams where people and with companies, and by the time I was done, and they were really great proposals, as I was like, wow, I didn't even know you guys did this type of stuff. This is great, you know? And that's the concept that you want from that contracting officer and their selection team when they're done looking at it saying, wow, this is the company I want to do business with. Sure.
Larry and I worked together a lot on this kind of stuff. I think just being a little strong about what he said, essentially, if you've got the funding, and you've got the capital to work with, best case scenario is to have some type of a team to work on it. But like you said, this has to be money you're willing to spend and move. Because you can't be spending money that needs to generate money. You have operational money that can't be part of your operational capital. It needs to be capital, really, you need capital or market capital for that purpose. And like I said, when you're writing RFP, you're gonna, I don't know many people who can write RFP and review themselves. You really have to find somebody to do it, like you said, and have somebody who's not physically connected to that topic, who can do a variety and look at it from a perspective. That's gonna help you a lot. You need to have that, X and Y. Different, then you're going to get more out of it. But funding wise, if you've got it, that's the scenario. Yes, you're experts, you're good at it. What you can't do is don't have money.
That's true.
We've seen people go on doing that. They throw all their money at TV and all this stuff, hope and prayer. I don't care how good they are, you're just wishing you would throw it out there.
There's no guarantees, yeah. And kind of to go back again with what Richard's saying here is that, you know, there are some great people out there. But like Lee was saying, there's a lot of free resources to you also, okay? So if there aren't many people that will help you write an RFP for free. But there are a lot of people who will do the red team with you for free, okay? So Charles's organization, and Charles isn't here right now, but his organization, which is the Small Business Development Center here at Howard, is they actually will help you do red teams, okay? So, I mean, they won't sit and write the proposal for you, but, you know, he'll actually reach out, and he's reached out to people like me before and said, hey, you know, I've got a small business, they're trying to put this thing out, would you mind sitting on a red team with them for today? Yeah, sure, no problem. You know, Richard's done the same thing. He's sat on red teams before. So don't utilize those free resources. And I mean, that's what the guys were saying here, is there's so many free resources. And we're in the DC area where there's so many of these things that are available out there, you know, and, you know, there's a lot of people who have retired out of the government who, you know, they still want to be involved in different things. So, you know, they'll sit on these things with you. You know, they're not going to give you, you know, hours upon hours of free service, but, you know, they'll review things for you and they'll say, hey, if you want to make this a little stronger, I would suggest these things, right? Yes, ma'am. You know, actually, the lady behind you was first, but then I'll come right back to you. Okay.
rules in some cases. So what is your feeling about how do we respond and when in an environment where there's more and more information being requested,
Yes.
but then it's like, I don't want to do this.
Yep.
They don't already
So I'll repeat her question. Basically, what she said is, as the RFPs are coming out, they're condensing and asking for you to put a wealth of information now instead of 20 pages into 5 pages. And how do you respond to that? There's a few different ways. And you mentioned one of them is putting things into tables or charts, because what will happen is your font size is different in those, so you can put more information in. That's one of the ways. The other thing you can always do is you can send, when they do questions and answers, you can send questions back to the contracting officer and request more information. You know, you can say, would you extend this to from 10 pages to 12? Because, and then give you a reason why. And a lot of times, if you give a good reason why you need something, they'll do it. You know, I haven't seen really too many contracting officers that are not reasonable, you know, but you have to give them a reason to ask for something. You know, not just, well, hey, I know this has been out for 6 months, would you extend it now for another month? Why? You know, if everybody else thinks that they can respond in that time, but maybe you just seen it, why do I need to, you know, give you an extra month for your company? So a lot of times they'll say no to that, but you know, I've never seen them really, if you give a great reason for something, why they don't at least give you an answer back for it. Yeah. You had a question. Yes, ma'am. No, not necessarily. And the question was, most RFPs coming out, are they really looking for people who have already had contracts with the government? No, not at all. I mean, you can have a brand new business and go after work with the government. You know, past performance does matter, okay? But there's ways to get around that. Okay, let's say you've got some great unique solution and you want to bring that into the federal government, but you've never done business with the federal government. They will let you use commercial practice, all right, for your past performance. As a small business, there's within the FAR 15, which talks about past performance, it allows you to use personal past performance. Okay, so you as a business owner can use your personal past performance for what's called emerging small businesses. So if you're a small business that's less than, I don't even remember the number now, but I think it's around $6 million. If you're less than $6 million a year in revenue, you're considering an emerging small business. You can use your personal past performance from the owners of the company. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and what they want to do is they want to encourage small businesses, right? I mean, now they're going to limit the size and the scope of what you can do, right, from that, because there's risk, right? And that's really what any proposal response should be, is mitigating that risk of doing business with you, right? So I want to do business with you as an agency. I have to understand my risk of giving that contract to you for you to be successful, for me to get that done. Because my job as a contracting officer, if I'm a contracting officer, is to ensure that you're successful, right? Because if you're not successful, then I have all kinds of other things I got to do to remove you, right? But their job is to ensure success. So your proposal that you write for them should mitigate any risk of doing business with you, right? That's why they ask you for past performance. So if you say, has anyone ever done this type of work before? Yeah, okay, list us 3 past performances of similar size and scope of this type of opportunity, right? So you can say, oh yeah, I've done this here, I've done it there, I've done it there. Okay, so now we've gotten rid of that risk, right, that you've never done it before. And then they ask you to do a price on the proposal, right? And the price is really saying, is this feasible? Could you really do it for this, right? So let's say, for instance, I say, okay, I want you to, and I'm going to make something up, right? I want you to build an interactive website for me. And I want it to have full motion video and blah, blah, blah. And I need it up within 60 days. And you come back and say, "Pfft, we can do that for $1,000. It's like, and I'm not feeling comfortable with that because I don't think that's realistic. And that's what they're looking for, is they're looking for to say, are your numbers realistic? And even when they say, okay, we're going to go with the lowest price technically acceptable, right? But what they still have to look at, even in that lowest price, is it a reasonable price for doing that type of business, right? And so those things are all about mitigating that risk of doing business with you. And that's what that proposal should do. And that's why when you do the capture, you want to understand all these things. You want to say, what are they looking at as risks, right? What does the customer think is a risk? What do we think is a risk? You know, maybe we don't have enough information. I'll use the same scenario when we just said a website. What does that mean? You know, it may mean something different to me than it does to you, to him, or to her. You know, when we're looking at something saying, well, is a website one page on the web? That could literally be a website, you know, or is it something that has 500 pages or has multiple links to other databases and pulls information in, and, you know, it has analytics behind it, has all these other things. What is it that they're really looking for? So you have to understand that. You have to understand what the customers. Did that answer your question, though? Or did I just? Okay. Any other questions? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not, her question was, is if someone's looking at it and they're saying, okay, I've worked at a certain level within a large organization or an agency, and now I've transitioned out and I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to do those same type of services as an entrepreneur, how do they look at that? I think they look at that as a plus. I mean, that's your past performance. I mean, if you were to say to me, hey, I've done this and I've done it for 22 years at this agency and I've done it at this level, you know, the bigger the better, because that shows me that you can handle that scope of work, right? So yeah, I mean, and to think now that you're an entrepreneur doing it, the only risk at that point is not your knowledge and not your understanding of the complexity of what's being done, but can you financially handle that responsibility of the contract, right? And so that's where sometimes it's better to have a teammate going in, right, who has that, you know, longevity of being a contractor as well, and say, well, you know, I'm partnering with this person, you know, or I've got a mentor-protege agreement with some other company, and they're there as my big brother or big sister now, right? Or I've got, you know, this line of credit from my banker that says they'll give me $100 million if I need it. Okay, let me get out of your way here. Start, right? And so you've got to show in your proposal response how you're mitigating the risk of doing business with you. Yes, ma'am. Her question was, should you stay focused on one agency or should you go across multiple agencies? And that depends on who you talk to. You know, I can tell you that Richard and I have worked together, like you said, multiple times in different places, and we would have a different thought on the answer to that. It depends on your bandwidth and your ability to multitask in your own mind and keep things separated. There's people who can multitask very well, right? There's others who have a real hard time single tasking things and getting them completed, right? So don't put more on your plate than you can handle, but ensure that you've got enough there and a robust enough pipeline that should something go away, you have a backup, right? Because I can tell you, I've seen opportunities that, have chased them for 2 years, and billion-dollar opportunities, and then the agency just said, we decided we're not going to do this anymore. And I'll give you a real-life example of that, and that was with the Defense Health Agency. And they had an opportunity they were going to put out, and it was called DeSimmons, and they actually were going after this thing. It was what was it, $6.8 billion opportunity. There was going to be 50 awards, track this thing for 2 years, and then they said, we decided we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to actually use GSA schedule. And I can tell you that there are organizations here in the Beltway that spent hundreds of millions of dollars tracking this opportunity and putting capture dollars into it, meetings. I mean, it was out for 2 years on the streets. So again, I know that didn't really say yes or no to that, but it's understanding what your capabilities are, ensuring that you're not, putting more on your plate than you can handle. But I personally believe in a robust pipeline. I think you have to have multiple things going on, because I've seen too many times where things have dropped off. There's other people who have been focused in particular agencies, and they understand that agency, and that's all they work. And they've been very successful working that agency. But me, I'm kind of like all across the board. So that's why I said we'd be different. Richard spent a lot of his time working, 1 or 2 agencies, and he's focused on those. So. Yes, ma'am. Mm. Well, thank you. And there isn't, and I think if there was a cookie cutter way, every one of us small business owners would be exactly the same. We're not, right? That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us different. That's what, allows us to think outside of that box. And most of the people who are entrepreneurs don't fit well in cookie cutters to begin with, all right? You're there because, you think about things, doing them a little bit disruptive from the way that they've been doing them, right? And me personally, I love the things that are disruptive. I love that little bit of chaos and things, right? I love what, Uber did to taxis. I hated taxis, right? I love the fact that I can use my cell phone and I can get somebody to come right to the door and pick me up. And I don't even have to worry about pulling any cash out of my pocket. It's already paid for. It's like, hey, it's a limo service almost, But, I love those type of things. I hated going to the store and getting DVDs. Hey, it's great. You can pick up your laptop, you can get a movie. Those are the things I like. I mean, there's looking at things and saying, how can you change the way people look at something? And there's better ways to do it. And, I've heard people say, well, isn't everything already invented? Come on, really? No. Not at all. There's a better way to do something every single day. Yes, ma'am. Good for you. Good for you. Absolutely. I've got 2 daughters, and I've told them, I said, the only limitation you have is yourself. If you allow somebody to tell you you can't do something, you've put your own limitation on yourself. It's when people say you can't do it, it means they can't do it, right? You can do whatever you want to do. You can be anything you want to be. We're in a great country, right? I mean, we've got all kinds of opportunities out there. We just got to look at it and say, what am I willing to invest in my time and effort to make it happen? That's true. Any other questions? Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and I can tell you that I've been doing this for a little over 35 years, and federal spending never changes. It's just where they spend it changes, right? So depending on which group is in, they'll spend it either in defense and homeland security, or they'll spend it in social services, right? And the amount of money never changes. So I think that's what we were talking about before, is having kind of a diverse portfolio of clients, is that when you go through those cycles, is that it doesn't bother you. So if you have a diverse portfolio, then you're much easier to ride those waves out. As far as health market space, I don't see that going down, even though they're saying they're going to cut the spending. We've got an aging population, you know, and I can tell you that the population that is aging is the ones that have the money, and they're not going to let healthcare go away, right? It's just not going to happen. You know, you may see less spending on free healthcare, but you're not going to see less money spent on healthcare. I mean, it's you know, people are still going to look for ways to keep that longevity of life, right? You want to live healthier, you want to live better, you want to, you know, have a better lifestyle. So I don't see that that's going away, but I do understand what you're saying, and I think having a diverse portfolio of clients is helpful. You know, I think also that telling when people that I do some consulting with is saying, try to have a diverse portfolio also of commercial clients and government clients, because you know your commercial clients, you know, government clients are long-term reoccurring revenue streams is the way I look at it, right? You're going to have a contract that's for 3 to 5 years, and that money is consistent. The government doesn't not pay, right? You know, with the exception of a couple local governments, I've never had a problem with government paying. Commercial clients, they may pay more, but they sometimes go bankrupt. So, you know, you just have to be careful on those things. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you guys very much. And I think this is the last presentation, so I think a lot of the booths upstairs are starting to break down, so if you wanted to go back through and see some of those. What I do recommend, though, is everybody here just talk to each other. Introduce yourself to at least one person in the room before you leave and say, hi, my name is, and exchange cards. Because the person sitting next to you could be that next business that you need to do business with. And I can tell you, I've pulled out cards before for somebody I met 4 or 5 years ago and looking at it and going, wow, that's a great person for who I need to have to win this bid. And, you know, you never know. You know, I mean, this lady here has already told you she's been in 3 different agencies. So she knows 3 different agencies. You got someone right here sitting in the room who's worked in 3 different agencies, right? This is somebody I want to meet after here. So,
Everybody here, all this environment, this is, you know, like, we the big department.
absolutely, absolutely.
We didn't get so much leverage, just having somebody here be on your team with you, whether they're proposal or be on the red team, they can be part of that, show things to each other, they can look at each other's writers.
Yeah.
It becomes a great, 2 good people together, it can be very powerful.
You aware? Are you? Oh, very nice. Okay. All right, thank you all very much. Have a great day, and thank you for coming to the event.